The Beatitudes. Probably one of the most familiar stories in the Gospels is Matthew's Sermon on the Mount. And remember, the Sermon on the Mount goes for a long time. This is just the beginning of it, the Beatitudes. It is one of the highlights, one of the big things we all remember about the Gospels, about Jesus' ministry among us. If we ask someone to recall these, we can probably get most of them. For sure, we would say, blessed are the something, and fill in the blank. Preferably not the Monty Python version, but this version. We may get some of them, maybe not all of them. Blessed are the poor in spirit, the meek, the peacemakers, and so on. Most of us probably identify the Beatitudes with Matthew, though many of us will recall them in Luke's Gospel as well, called the Sermon on the Plain. And remember, each is slightly different in what goes on around the sermon. In Luke, Jesus calls his disciples to him, and they all stand on a flat plain, and he begins. They are not alone, as the crowd is definitely within earshot. And this is on purpose, as Jesus tells both blessings and woes. In Matthew, Jesus takes the disciples alone and goes up the mountain, sits down with them, and begins to teach. Blessed are those who follow in the way of God, who are faithful, who endure, who strive to walk humbly with their God. Blessed or happy are those who fulfill the Lord's requirements. And in this story, we have a complete summary of our readings from Micah and Paul this morning. In Micah, God has a controversy with the people because they have forgotten God's saving acts of old, forgotten all that the Lord has done for them and all that the Lord requires of them, to walk humbly with your God. In this line alone, do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. This, we are told, is what the Lord requires of the people, including us. In my annotated NRSV Bible, the big heavy one that I keep on my desk, a note on this says, in this single sentence, the prophet sums up the legal, ethical, and covenantal requirements of religion and resonates with other prophets such as Amos, Hosea, and Isaiah. Micah, as prophet, foretells the goodness that will come to God's people, and in my mind, points to two very specific things that foretell about Jesus. Jesus as embodiment of these requirements, and Jesus as God incarnate, reminding us of his saving acts before his death on the cross. In our service for Good Friday, there is a point where a large wooden cross can be carried in. Here at the Cathedral, we have always had instrumental music played for this part, but I have been in other places and have participated in choirs in other places where we would sing what is called the reproaches at this point, attributing the same words heard here in Micah to Jesus. God says these words in Micah, but the music has Jesus repeating them as he is condemned to death. O my people, what have I done unto thee? And wherein have I wearied thee? Testify against me. And it goes on to name all the acts, such as the Exodus and so on, but from Jesus' perspective. In our own Book of Common Prayer, in the Catechism, under the section entitled The Old Covenant, we read this requirement: to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. Jesus is the full embodiment of this requirement as he came to show us, to give us an example of how to do it. Paul continues this message of Christ as example as he proclaims the cross as the power of God. The cross, Christ crucified, is the saving power for us. He goes on to talk about what is wise and what is foolish, meaning that it is not the wise who are saved, but those who believe, who have faith, who walk humbly with our God. Paul writes that God chose things that are not, the lowly, the weak, etc., to nullify the things that are, the rich as in proud, conceited, haughty. Jesus does this constantly as he turns things upside down. The last shall be first, and the first shall be last. Listen to the words of the Song of Mary, the Magnificat. For he has regarded the lowliness of his handmaiden, and he has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty. The power of the cross of Christ is the message that saves. Christ died to save us. But we have to remember that we, those who were disciples and beyond, didn't fully understand this until Christ died and rose from the dead. After his resurrection, then they remembered all he said, all he taught them, and the Spirit came upon them to lead them into all truth. The Spirit is certainly here among us now, continuing to lead us and guide us. And the Spirit was strong as we began 2026. If you remember, I reported last year that in 2023 and 2024, still recovering from the pandemic, we set ambitious goals for pledges that we didn't meet. This made it hard to budget for 2025, and we were required to make some tough decisions in order to balance the budget. We had to cut both budget and personnel, and I made a promise that I would work with the vestry and all of you to find ways to increase membership. Pledging revenue only increases by giving more or by adding new givers. And due to our concerted efforts, I'm happy to say that we did add new members in 2025. We did increase our pledge and plate revenue, and we grew as a community and a parish. And I'm proud of how so many of you stepped up and helped with ideas and follow-through that welcomed visitors, newcomers, and made them feel a part of the family. We are a family, and we accomplished a lot in 2025, but as you've heard me say time and time again, we can always do more. The year kicked off with our chili and game night in January. We had a great crowd in Hayden Hall that night, and it led to the idea that we should do something like that more often. And soon after, a new social events committee was formed. They set out to put a whole year of events together, with a few breaks for Lent or in the summer. And you'll hear about them throughout this report and read about them in the annual report. It has been a great addition to our Cathedral calendar, and it continues this year. Next, we hosted a lunch fundraiser for our local chapter of the Union of Black Episcopalians, and we welcomed the former presiding bishop, Michael Curry, as our guest and preacher for the diocesan service celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. held later that day. Then later in January, the choir offered its first choral evensong of the new year. We continued our learning series with the Center for Faith and Culture at William Jewell College. We held diocesan ordinations and held our annual meeting where we thanked our outgoing vestry members and welcomed those newly elected, and set our vestry retreat for later in the year. Remember, there was a big event coming in May involving a new bishop, and the Diocesan Consecration Committee was in full meeting mode at this time. In February, newly ordained C.J. Duffy started his diaconal training with us. We held our next game night, this time having a trivia contest. Later, several of our youth traveled with youth from St. Andrews on a ski trip. We hosted a diocesan Absalom Jones lunch with special speaker, the Reverend Dr. Gail Fisher Stewart. We also hosted a congregational development and vitality workshop. All of our clergy and many of our vestry members attended. This was an important event as it shaped what we would focus on at our vestry retreat, growing the parish. It was a wonderful event that spawned so many ideas. And lastly, in February, We were a host parish along with St. Paul's and St. Andrew's for the EPN conference, the Episcopal Parish Network. We held the closing Eucharist and barbecue reception here with over 500 in attendance. This year, in the first week of March, we will send our delegation to EPN in Charlotte, North Carolina. Hopefully the snow will have melted by then. March began with one of two celebrations for Bishop Diane's ministry with us, a Motown dance party. Many from all over the diocese came to dance and wish Diane well. The next day was our Shrove Sunday pancake breakfast, cooked in-house by many volunteers from the parish. This would suggest Lent was near, so the next event was our annual Jambalaya Mardi Gras dinner, followed by our observance of Ash Wednesday the next day. Part of our Lenten programming last year was my class through our partnership with William Jewell. Mid-March, we had our second celebration for Bishop Diane, including a Eucharist and farewell reception. By this time, Bishop-elect Amy had started her work in the diocese along with Bishop Diane. In April, we hosted the Asian American Pacific Islander Conference. Later, we had our annual diocesan Chrism Mass during Holy Week, Bishop Diane's last one with us. Then we had our services for Holy Week and Easter Vigil. Bishop Diane confirmed, reaffirmed, and received 18 people that night. Easter Day was glorious, as were the receptions after the Vigil and Easter Day services. Near the end of the month, we had our next game night, this time bingo. In May, we hosted the largest event I have ever seen at the Cathedral, the ordination, consecration, and seating of the Right Reverend Amy Daffler-Moe as the 9th Bishop of West Missouri. We had over 600 people seated in the nave, not to mention some spillover in Founders Hall and the huge tent over the courtyard. Many thanks to all who helped with this amazing event, especially the search, transition, and consecration committees, among many others. The following week, I joined with fellow deans throughout the U.S. and Canada for the North American Deans Conference, this time in Omaha, Nebraska. I was part of the planning team for the conference, along with the cathedral deans of the Diocese of Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and Western Kansas. This year, the conference will be in April in San Diego, California. May continued with our combined diocesan and cathedral staff retreat, Youth Sunday, and our next game night with Bunko. In June, we hosted a baby shower for Claire and Andres, while at the same time bid farewell to Claire as our children, youth, and young adult minister. We were disappointed to see her leave, but she was soon to be ordained in the Diocese of Kansas, and they had other plans for her. June also brought our parish picnic, our participation in the Keyse Pride Festival, and Claire's ordination to the diaconate at Grace Cathedral in Topeka. And speaking of Grace Cathedral, I did a pulpit swap with Dean Torrey on the last Sunday in June. It was nice to be close enough distance-wise to be able to do that. In July, we held our first summer parish breakfast. Our game night became a movie night as we gathered around the big inflatable movie screen to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. The month concluded with diocesan priestly ordination, including CJ. He celebrated the Eucharist the next day, and we bid him farewell as he soon left to take a new call in the Diocese of Chicago. As we turned our attention to the fall, we held one last summer activity with a parish breakfast in August. September began with our ministry fair, a great way to see all the opportunities that are available to serve at the cathedral, and we'll always need people to serve. Next was our annual Cathedral Cup croquet tournament, this year with an Alice in Wonderland theme. A great time was had by all, and the costumes were a lot of fun. Also this month, we held a newcomers coffee hour, something we will definitely continue to do. The end of the month had our now annual volunteer appreciation brunch. Help is hard to come by sometimes, So it is nice to let all of our volunteers know how much we, and especially Joan, appreciate them. September 30th brought with it the newest addition to our staff, Zahir Popo, as our associate organist, and we all have enjoyed having him here with us. October started with a flurry of events and activities, a jazz fundraiser for the choir on Friday evening, our annual blessing of the animals on Saturday morning, and our annual hymn sing on Sunday afternoon. Oh, and Claire came back. Claire still works part-time for the Diocese of Kansas, and we were able to work out for her to come back to the Cathedral part-time as our associate for children, youth, and young adults. Welcome back. In the second half of October, we had our stewardship lunch, game night with bingo, and our fall festival. November saw the return of the Diocesan Convention, our annual Kirkin of the Tartans Sunday, our Thanksgiving service, an Altar Guild work day, and Advent decorating. We also tried something new with stewardship, something newer in recent years. We decided to host gatherings at 3 different locations in the metro to talk more about how we budget and how important giving is. It was also a way to say thank you for your generosity. We held these gatherings on 3 consecutive nights at the Cathedral, the Moore House, and my house. They were well attended, informative, and fun, and we will certainly want to do these again this year. In December, we welcomed the Nativity Puppets once again, celebrated our festival of lessons and carols, and enjoyed the City Come Again celebration concert with William Jewell College. We also welcomed Bishop Amy for the first time at our Christmas Eve 5 p.m. service. Thank you especially to Claire and to our children and youth who participated once again in the Christmas pageant. Both the 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. Christmas Eve services had more people than we have had in several years. All said, 2025 was a good year for the Cathedral. Stewardship and giving were up, as were the number of people joining our services, both in person and online. Thank you to all who have helped make it a strong year. Thank you to the Cathedral staff for your tireless work. Thank you to the wardens and vestry for your tireless work and for being good stewards and caretakers of our facilities. It proved to be a challenging year for our facilities, and I especially want to thank Nigel and Angie for all they did to help with that. Thank you to all ministry groups, the Altar Guild, Trinity Choir, Handbell Choir, lay Eucharistic ministers, acolytes, verger, lectors, ushers, greeters, oblation bearers, live streaming teams, Eucharistic visitors, healing team, Holy Hands, St. John's Bible volunteers, children's ministry volunteers, parking volunteers, outreach volunteers, Daughters of the King, and other volunteers, and everyone for your work. To all who meet online, the GHTC Virtual Cafe, the Lectionary Study, and the Women's Bible Study. To all committees, social action and outreach, budget, finance, stewardship, buildings and grounds, community engagement, social events, newcomers, children and youth, and any others. I appreciate so much your involvement. To all who facilitate and lead study groups, and to all who teach, thank you. To all who gather for dinner with friends groups, thank you. You are the people that make this place and these ministries work. To James, Barbara, and Claire, thank you for sharing in ministry with me. Thank you to all of you for allowing me to be your dean and for letting me serve in this great cathedral. I look forward to all we will accomplish together in 2026 and all the ways we will continue to serve God's people from this place. One way we will accomplish this is to meet and come up with a new strategic plan as we are in the final year of our current plan. Also, as many of you already know, I will be taking a sabbatical this spring into summer from May 15th to August 15th. Per my letter of agreement, I am able to take a sabbatical after 6 years of service, which I reached in December. I figured taking this time in the late spring and summer would be the least disruptive time to be away. I'm still planning what I'll do during that time, but assure you I will return refreshed and ready to work. I also assure you that I will not use this time to look for another job, but will remain here, God willing, for years to come. I want to work with all of you to make 2026 even more productive than 2025, to keep doing activities and events together, keep welcoming in new people, and keep building the church in this part of God's kingdom. What is required of us? To do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with our God. Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." We are those people if we fulfill our requirements. We are those people if we endure persecution on behalf of doing what is right in the eyes of God, in the love of Christ. Doing what is right and enduring persecution, not persecuting others or hurting others. We are those people if we do justice, even when it hurts. Love kindness to all people, not just the ones we deem worthy. And walk humbly with our God. Not proudly, not boasting, but humbly. Then we are truly blessed forever. Amen.